Otherwise, it was not halted until the subject had given the maximum 450-volt shock 3 times in succession. In Milgram's first set of experiments, 65%, 26 out of 40 teachers, administered the final massive 450-volt shock. Now, at some point, every teacher paused and questioned the experiment. Some offered to even refund the money they received for their participation. Only one participant steadfastly refused to administer shocks before reaching the 300-volt level. In addition, none of the 14 participants who eventually refused to administer the final shocks insisted that the experiment itself be terminated, or left the room to check on the health of the victim without first requesting permission to leave. How do we interpret these bizarre findings? Clarence Darrow, the Unitarian attorney who defended the teaching of evolution in the Scopes monkey trial, once said that true patriotism hates injustice in its own land more than anywhere else. Few of us have difficulty condemning Nazis for the horrors inflicted on millions during the Holocaust. And many now believe that the German people as a whole were at least partly complicit in the acts of Hitler's regime. But how are we when we point that mirror of recrimination in our own direction? In what subtle, perhaps even not so subtle ways, are we obedient to authority figures in ways contrary to our personal convictions? In 19 other variations conducted of his original experiment, Milgram sought out factors that influenced our degree of obedience to authority. He found that the closer the victim sat to the teacher, the more the subject's compliance decreased. In one variation, the teacher had to physically hold the learner's arm onto a shock plate. And even under that condition, 30% of the participants completed the experiment. The participants' compliance decreased when the authorities' physical immediacy decreased, especially when the experimenter's commands came remotely over a telephone. In one variation, women were the participants. Obedience did not significantly differ, although the women communicated experiencing higher levels of stress. Milgram also combined the effect of authority with that of conformity. In Bill's experiments, the participant was joined by 1 or 2 additional teachers who were also actors like the learner. The behavior of the participants' peers strongly affected the results. In one variation, when 2 additional teachers refused to comply, only 4 of the 40 participants continued in the experiment. In another, the participant performed a subsidiary task, reading the questions over the microphone or recording the learner's answers, while another teacher complied fully with the shocks. In that variation, 37 of 40 continued with the experiment. If we accept these findings as valid, what do we learn? We learn to be wary of those who would distance the victims of our actions far away, either literally or figuratively, by speaking of them as the other, who is not one of us. We learn that we must heighten our possible need to resist authority when that figure of authority stands in our immediate presence. It's one thing to write a letter protesting a congressional action, and quite another to face the rubber bullet of an armed policeman standing in front of you. And we especially learn to question the motives of those who would encourage our blind obedience to authority. Dr. Norman Cousins, Unitarian editor and author of books on medicine and healing, has been quoted as saying, "Patriotism, to be truly American, begins with the human allegiance." In the end, Germans did not obey a swastika. They obeyed a person wearing a swastika. Germans were not complicit in atrocity because they carried a party membership card or saluted a flag. They were complicit because they stood silent as neighbors and friends were being carried away. They were complicit because they distanced themselves from the victims of authority even when they knew that their leaders were wrong. Labor Day is not about parades and picnics. It's not about labor, management, or government laying claim to the stars and stripes, the bald eagle, the Statue of Liberty, or any other symbol of America. That is the idolatry of authority. Labor Day is about true patriotism. In his book, The American Creed, Unitarian Universalist minister Forrest Church wrote, "American faith is one with American freedom. First religious and then civil liberty were the primary goals of our forebears. Having achieved these freedoms, they guaranteed them for us. Looking back over world history, we see that a relatively few have been born truly free, and many have died in the struggle for liberty. To forget this fact is bad for our souls. It is bad for you as America's children, and it is bad for the world, given how powerful our nation is." So, on this Labor Day, I ask you for your obedience. I ask for your obedience not to a uniform, or to an office, or even to this free pulpit. I ask you for your obedience to your own heart, your mind, your faith, and your conviction. Together, heart, mind, faith, and conviction will combine to form the foundation of your conscience. I ask for your obedience to the authority of your conscience based on a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So long as my country remains true to its founding principles, I will proudly pledge my allegiance to it. So long as states remain committed to the welfare of all citizens, I will offer my support gladly and without protest. But whenever I see those principles being compromised by greed, political expedience, and know-nothing short-sightedness, then dissent is my purest form of patriotism. If I stand by and allow those driven by elitism and money to drain away the power of working men and women to protect their workplace and the quality of their labors, then I simply obey an unjust authority. This Labor Day weekend, consider ways to obey your conscience and to fulfill our commitment to the right of conscience and to the use of the democratic process. Spirit of life and love, that we know by many names, be with us now as we enter an attitude of reflection, meditation, and prayer. Sometimes we feel conflicted by feelings at odds with each other. We take pride in our institutions, our nation, our professions, our various communities. We also feel the frustration when those same institutions betray our sense of what is right, either through carelessness or incompetence, or through callous disregard for the well-being of people, principles, or our planet. Such conflicting emotions are not necessarily a bad thing. They are a sign of an active and healthy conscience that cares deeply about the world and our place in it. So go out and enjoy the picnics and parades this Labor Day. Revel in what America truly stands for. Then tomorrow, come back refreshed and prepared for the work of real patriots, living justly and doing good. Let it be so. Our closing words again come from Adlai Stevenson's speech, The Nature of Patriotism. We are embarked on a great adventure. Let us proclaim our faith in the future of humankind, of good heart and good cheer, faithful to ourselves and our traditions. We can lift the cause of freedom, the cause of free people, so high no power on earth can tear it down. Living, speaking like Americans, we can lead the way to a happy and peaceful world. Until next time.